The following production is part of the Play Some Video Games podcast network.
EA Sports. It's in the game.
Hello, everybody. Do you hear that? That's right. It's the school bell. So put away your lunches, find your seats, because class is in session and you are about to get schooled. It is I, your host, Kevin, and with me, of course, is Professor Caro.
We have not talked since, the end of October.
I know, right?
Yeah. How was your November?
Ooh, it was quick.
It was quick, yeah. It was. We were intending on probably getting this out during November, maybe, but it just kind of got pushed, and there's been a lot. But I mean, football season is still technically on for the NFL, but Absolutely. College ball, aside from the bowl games, is pretty much over.
That's true. You follow college ball, so you
Yeah.
I don't, so I the whole bowl thing is lost on me, but that works for you. But yeah, I'm still watching the real football. Air quotes.
The Pats lose to the Dolphins on a 3-pitch. Oh my God. I thought about you.
I was watching that game with my whole family, and I wanted to throw things from my living room into the kitchen. I was so mad. I'm like, are you kidding me? I was looking at it, I was like, this only happens in Division III schools.
What the heck is going on?
Yeah. And the crazy thing is that kind of play is something the Patriots would pull on somebody else.
Right.
And for the fact that somebody else pulled it on them. And then I don't know what it is with the Dolphins and the Patriots. We have a terrible record against the Dolphins. Anybody else is no problem. But it's the Dolphins of all teams. It makes no sense. Offensive humidity. I'll blame Coach Mo. He's tampering with those games.
They're just channeling the 73 team into the into the mix every time.
I don't know what it is. But so yeah, football. That's what we're talking about today. So typically the show is 3 different periods: history, the making of, science, the mechanics of any game we're talking about, then of course the free period where we talk about our fun facts and impressions. But we're doing things a little bit different today. Coach Mo sponsored a special day today. Today is field day instead, where we're going to learn all about the sport of American football for our Canadian friends and our European listeners. Discussing the 4 pivotal games in the early age of arcade and video games that brought the sport to a virtual world. And speaking of Coach, before we dive in, let's take a word from our sponsor.
The following is a paid advertisement. The opinions and views expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the PSVG Podcast Network or its employees, except for maybe Coach Mo. Are you looking for an amazing RPG? What about expansive multiplayer? Perhaps a single-player campaign as well. But what if that single-player campaign could be played with friends and not be watered down? Do you think it sounds too good to be true? Well, it sounds like the game dreams are made of. But wait, dreams can come true. Just pick up a copy of Madden 19, available on Xbox One, PS4, PC, and Nintendo... Oh. Wait, no, never mind. Anyway, as I was saying, pick up a copy of Madden 19, one of the nominees for Game of the Year by PSVG. This message was brought to you by PSVG OT and Sports Gamers Unite.
So, Kara, what 4 pivotal football games, American football, none of the indoor Canadian football garbage, throwing it out there right away, are we talking about today?
There were 4 games that I thought were at least very prevalent in the arcade and very pivotal in the early video game football days when, sports games were just being brought into arcades and consoles and stuff. So we're going to go in chronological order on these. 10-Yard Fight for the arcade, later ported to the Famicom and the NES from 1983 originally. is developed by IRIM or ERIM in Japan. I'm not exactly sure. By Taito in the US and Electric Coin in the European regions. They actually brought it over to Europe. Then we're going to be talking about the original Tecmo Bowl, which was originally made for the arcade, ported to the Nintendo Entertainment System, Game Boy, and the Play Choice 10. It's a thing, apparently. That was from 1987, and of course by Tecmo. Then we also have my personal favorite, but I'm kind of biased because this is what I played with as a kid. Super High Impact, originally for the arcade, later ported to the Genesis. And I think you said that it was also ported to the Super Nintendo because you were talking about a ROM later on. Like you had a ROM of it?
For Super High Impact?
Yeah. I remember you pulling that up, but I think it was for Super Nintendo is what you said.
I think I did. I know it was an arcade. I know it was Genesis. I'll look it up.
Okay. Anyway, that was in 1991, later ported in 1992, done by Midway Games and Iguana Entertainment and Acclaim Entertainment, who was back then it was Arena, I believe. And finally, we have Madden NFL 94, which was the very first Madden game that we know of today. There were actually a couple of Madden titles before then that John Madden had his name to. It was just called John Madden Football.
Yep.
Late 80s, early 90s type thing. But this is the true Madden that we know today that they've kind of expanded on. Made for the Genesis and the Super Nintendo in 1994, developed by Visual Concepts and published by Electronic Arts or EA.
And yes, Super High Impact also was on the SNES.
Okay.
Yep.
It was probably inferior because I love the sound cards on the Genesis way more than the Super Nintendo.
The sound clips for this game were incredible. We'll get to that, but yes, yeah, I agree.
It sounds amazing. Anyway, so before we start, I kind of wanted, because I put American in parentheses on all of our show notes because, you know, we might have some listeners that think football and are overseas from us, and football to them is what we call soccer, footy, you know, where you kick the soccer ball around and you try and it's just no hands football. This is American football, which if you don't know what it is, America. We are going to break it down for you pretty quick, just a few things. So you have 11 players on each side of the field for offense and defense. You switch off. Basically, each team switches off depending on who has the ball. Offense obviously has the ball. There's 100 yards of field, 50 yards for one side of the field, and there's a 50-yard line in the middle, and then 50 yards for the other side of the field. You're trying to get into the other team's end zone, which is another 10 yards on either side, but it does not count as the actual yards on the field. Once you break the plane, you're in there. For a touchdown, which is 6 points, you can either attempt to kick for an extra point if you get a touchdown, or you go for a 2-point conversion, which requires you to break the plane and get in the end zone again. Most people go for the extra point unless you're trying to tie it up or try and beat out somebody late in the game with a 2-point conversion. If you're not getting a touchdown, you can also score points for a field goal, which is just half of the points you get from a touchdown. It's only 3 points, which is where you kick from whatever comfortable point your kicker feels is, you know, good for him to get the ball into the end zone. He kicks it through the uprights, and that gives you 3 points. There's also safeties, which we're not really going to talk about, where the other team gets 2 points if you knock down the team that's got the ball in their own end zone. But that's just it's very rare for that to happen. So there are 4 downs is what they're called, which is basically each play. They're called downs, in which offense has to get at least 10 yards in order to advance to the next set of downs. So you see the 1st and 10, that means it's the first down and you have to get 10 yards to the next one. So if you get 3 yards, the next would be the second down and 7 yards to go. So it would be 2nd and 7, et cetera, et cetera. Generally, the quarterback is either going to hand the ball off to a runner or is going to throw the ball to a receiver to get down the field. But there's also stuff like crazy trick plays, like we just mentioned about the Dolphins doing at the Patriots game this past weekend, and quarterback keeps and sneaks, and we're not going to go into all of that. There is just a bunch of trickeration that can go into a game.
Trickeration, is that a George Bush word? Like that's a George W word right there.
It is George W. If the offense does not advance to the next set of downs, however, the team will most likely punt on their 4th down. So if there's like at least 4th and 2 or 3, I mean, unless you're really confident in your running game, you're probably going to want to punt it, which is basically where you bring your kicker or your punter out. 2 different people. It's like I occasionally you have the kicker that will do punting too, but most of the time punting is completely different art. They will punt on 4th down to get the ball as far away from their end zone as possible before the other team will start on offense. And like most games, most points at the end of the game is the winner.
And you forgot the most important part of like the ridiculous halftime shows and people that have no purpose being in a football game doing stuff.
Halftime, and halftime is 20 minutes in college, and is it 20 minutes in pro? I can't remember.
It's 20 or 30.
Okay.
It's hard to tell because they throw so much fluff in there. There's like
also there's 4 quarters. There's 15 minutes per quarter, so it's like an hour of game time. But clock runs or stops, so really a game lasts about 3 to 4 hours, depending on what craziness goes on.
Truth. All right, so diving in, as you mentioned, the first one we're going to tackle tonight is 10-Yard Fight, which came out in the arcade and NES in 1983 by Taito in the U.S. most notably. How this game works, it's your basic, pretty much as basic as you can get as far as football is concerned. Top-down perspective, vertical scrolling, no horizontal across the field. So it's very much like if you're familiar with the Madden games, looks exactly like that. Like that started that formula, climbing up a ladder essentially. Yep. Here's the weird part. There are no plays to choose from for offense or defense. If you're offense, the player receives the ball in the snap and either runs it with the quarterback, tosses it to the running back and then runs, or passes it to a long-distance receiver. On defense, the player chooses one of 2 different players only to control, and the computer controls the other defensive player. Punts and field goals are, of course, part of the game. There are 5 levels of increasing difficulty. So this is a little unique. Most football games are either like NCAA or they're pro football. Right. This one had the different levels of difficulty simply labeled high school, college, pro, playoff, and Super Bowl. The player proceeds to the next level of difficulty by winning both halves of the game, very much like a career mode would be nowadays. It was originally ported from arcade to Famicom in Japan and NES in the US and Europe to the MX home computer in Japan only. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette called this game a patriarch of football games. The Journal News called it an immortal classic. Now, that might be a little kind if you go back and look at that game, how it stands today. But, hey, it is what it is. Adam Dewerson of Sports Illustrated said it brought football games out of the Atari era and set a precedence for future football games. So while it was a massive jump from looking at Atari football or, ColecoVision football to 10-Yard Fight, it was a big difference, but I wouldn't say it kicked into the modern era of football, but hey, it's there. Nick Chortis of the Columbus Dispatch said it was realistic for the time and that players looked like real people. If you've seen any clips of this game, and I encourage you to do so, especially the kickoff. So the kickoff, ball goes flying down, your other team receives it. Everybody runs in a perfect square of players surrounding the guy with the ball, and while they're running upfield, it looks more like they're doing the hammer dance from MC Hammer's You Can't Touch Us. They just kind of jiggle back and forth. So I don't know what kind of real people he was looking at when he wrote that, but hey, it's out there. And BJ Klein called it less realistic than Tecmo Bowl, which makes a lot of sense because, in fact, it was. But yeah, iconic nonetheless. As rough as it may have been, as rough as it might be now when it's aged, it was a classic for sure. So leads us to our next one, as we mentioned, Tecmo Bowl. The original game is on arcade with a 2-monitor cabinet that can be played up to 4 players. This one was different, has a horizontal view. So no ladder fighting, you're actually going like a side scroll, like a Mario platformer type game scenario there. Only 2 teams were chosen at the time, the Wildcats and the Bulldogs. The arcade had limitations that only allowed 10 players on the field for each team. The NES had limitations, of course, that only allowed 9 players on the field for each team, not the full 11 as it should be. When it was ported to the NES, it had a downgrade in graphics, which is understandable. Going from arcade to NES, we still have a lot of games. And also reduced the number of players from 4 to 2. Most likely because the NES only had 2 controllers, couldn't really hook up 4 anyway. You could choose plays for offense in this game. There are only 4 offensive plays to choose from, however. On defense, the player can choose a play that they think will combat the offensive play. Much like a rock, paper, scissors approach we see with a lot of Nintendo-style games, if you pick the right play, you have better odds of taking on the offensive play, but you don't know what they're picking, so kind of hard to tell. If the play is chosen correctly, the offensive line collapses, the quarterback is either sacked or a turnover occurs in some instances. Nintendo Power voted this in the top 100 games of all time back in September 1997. Tecmo Bowl was at number 30. And Bo Jackson, of course, as we all know, a real-life player, is known for being unstoppable in the game. And Tech Times has noticed this is basically a means of cheating within the game. That if you had Bo Jackson, you were going to win all of the time. He was much faster than everybody else. He never fumbled. Like, it was just beast mode every single time he got his hands on the ball.
Yeah, he cheats. I mean, he doesn't cheat in real life, but I mean,
Bo knows football.
Oh, I know. Yeah. So the realism cracks me up. It's like, oh yeah, we got the little crab walk going on, and we come to my favorite, right? This is my favorite. This is what I grew up with. Genesis was my first console. This was my first football game. This was one of my first Genesis games, actually, and it actually really got me into learning the specs of the sport as much as I could for being 3 or 4 years old at the time, whatever it was. So Super High Impact was ported from the arcade to the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo. It was the predecessor to what we know as NFL Blitz, and it was preceded by just regular high impact football, not super high impact. This one also has a horizontal field view, so you're going across the field like you're looking at it through a TV screen. 15 football teams, all of which were originally in the high impact game, came back for this game. There's some obvious ones like Atlanta and Detroit and actual cities in the United States, but then they have bizarre ones like Team Europa and Africa and a bunch of world teams. Like 10-Yard Fight, you have 3 different skill levels. You have Exhibition Game, which is considered to be, I guess, the 4 preseason games that you would play. Pro, which is, just regular pro football, and Ultimate, which I would assume would be kind of like playoff or something. It's Ultimate I never played because it is hard enough to play this game as it is. One of my favorite things is a hitometer or hitometer, whatever you want to call it. If you make a defensive stop in the game, everything stops and this guy shows up and there's like a meter that you would like hit the bell, on at the fair, and the thing shoots all the way up to the top and rings the bell. If you go all the way up, like however hard you hit, it's like wicked hit. There's just a meter showing what your hit strength was, I suppose. There's also a fighting mode, literally where it's a button mashing against the other characters, and you get to fight the other players. Whoever button mashes the most and fills their bar up wins the fight. There's nothing other than just like, hey, I got glory points. I won the fight.
But the clips were awesome. The clips were awesome because you had one guy that was like dropping an elbow on a guy who was on the ground.
Oh yeah.
And then the other clip was a guy punching the guy with the helmet on, which made no sense because he's hitting the guy on top of the head who's wearing a helmet. But
yep. Speaking of which, like after plays would end, the guy that would be knocking the offensive player down, he would still be punching the guy. And I'm like, that's a flag.
Where are the refs?
I mean, seriously, like back then it just didn't matter, especially in, I guess in the virtual world, there are no, I don't play Madden. I don't play NCAA football. I don't know if there's flags or not.
Oh yeah, there is.
There is. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So it's legit now. Back then it wasn't so much legit. There's also world record standings that were incorporated into the arcade cabinets so that I guess all of the arcade cabinets would talk to each other and know who had the best scores worldwide over a lifetime, like before unless the arcade cabinet was obviously reset or unplugged or something. The arcade cabinets also dispensed collectible trading cards, which I think is super cool. And I can't believe I never played this game in an arcade. Of course, it wasn't exactly one of the most well-known football games, I believe. So I don't know. I would just go just to collect the trading cards. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, right.
They had instant replay. This was similar to the replays from Atari's Food Fight from 1982. And probably the best thing about this game are the actual real life sound clips of the dudes talking. There are sound bites that I just have a few written down. I'm going to try and replicate them as much as I can, but I highly suggest that you just look it up when you're lined up and the ball's getting ready to be hiked. Your mama's boy. In your face. You're toast. And if you get hit, ow, my knee. Go down. And then if you get an interception or a touchdown or you fail to convert on 4th down, you blew it. Yeah, and the guy just face palms. It's great. And if you fumble the ball, somebody randomly yells out, "Whoa!" It's so weird. But I promise you, just look up some gameplay of this game, and you will not be disappointed with the amount of sound bites that are there. Like my dad and I, to this day, we still like your mama's boy. That's like an inside joke because we used to play this game all the time together.
That's
Great game. I'm biased. Obviously, this was my game growing up.
I mean, it makes sense. So you look at the time frame. We talked about a game from '83, a game from '87, and now this one comes along in '91, and the next one, Madden, at '94, obviously came out in '94. Super high impact. Honestly, looking at them, even though it was on Genesis, had in my mind the best graphics. I think. Like, look
I agree.
at stuff,
I agree.
It really does look better. I mean, now keep in mind these are still 16-bit games.
Right.
This one to me looks better than Madden '94 does. Like, it's strange that I didn't have any hands-on experience with this game growing up, despite it looking a lot better. But we'll move on. So the next one is obviously Madden '94. Now this one is the one I spent the most time with. Coach Mo is probably like clapping his hands somewhere where I get to talk about being Madden, being excited because I played the crap out of this game when I had an SNES, and it's mainly because during that era of time in the NFL, the top team at the time was like the Dallas Cowboys. And my dad was a huge Dallas Cowboys fan. He still is a huge Dallas Cowboys fan. Mm-hmm. So growing up at my house, I wasn't that much into football, but I would always watch the games with him. We watched the Super Bowl together, and it was all the time. It was like Bills and Cowboys. So it was always that way. So he wanted Madden, so I always played as the Cowboys. Didn't really get into football until I was older, but I played this game so much because of him and his love of it, and that's the reason I had the game. So this is the first game in the Madden series as we know today, the first game with an official NFL license to the game. Mm-hmm. EA actually had a hard time developing the game for the SNES and passed it off to Visual Concepts, who was an experienced Apple coder. The issue was a slower processor in the SNES, of course. As we know, like when you compare the Genesis to the SNES definitely had more power. After the speed had to be improved from 20 frames a second to 45 frames a second, so it was kind of the drop down there, so it was a lot harder to code for than it should have been. After gameplay and a vote, 26 out of 29 people chose his code over the previous EA code. So Visual Concepts go on to work on future Maddens as a result of it because they're able to just manipulate that SNES in a way that worked best for them. This brings back the vertical field view, as we know today, that Madden still uses today. Mm-hmm. And it was also the first Madden that allowed players to play a full regular season via password, of course. We didn't have game state, stuff like that like we do now, where it's like, it just backs up to the cloud. It's all good. No, you had to enter a password. But you were able to play through a whole season that way, so it was kind of cool. Fun fact here, first game to use the EA Sports to the game audio bite, which went on forever after that. So introduced flip play, play call mode, pass catch mode, and bluff play options in the series. So much more in-depth play call than we saw in previous games. Although I will say, High Impact still had some to that thing. Not as in depth, but they did have a lot of different play call options. There was a few.
Right. So, at least a few pages worth.
Exactly. So, and this one took it a little bit higher. First Madden title to pause action and rotate the screen around during instant replays and also during kick punts and turns over. So as you kick the ball, the screen would then shift and rotate around to the receiving team. So that basically whatever team had control was always on the bottom. Whoever had the ball was always on the bottom of the screen. And an error in the game caused the rosters for the New York Giants and Jets to actually be reversed initially. The error affected copies of the game for the SNES during Christmas season of 1993, which is when the game initially launched. So
can you imagine how angry the people that were Giants and Jets fans were, and just like, are you kidding me? You're making my guy a Jets person, or vice versa.
Oh yeah, because being in the same states, the Giants and Jets fans, they don't get along. So it's like the last thing you want is for them to be on the other team. And also that's a huge mess up there because this is the first game that had the NFL license, and it's like, by the way, we just switched entire teams. No big deal, right? It's okay. Yeah.
Oh wow. So we have talked about the main four games. Sorry. So we're not really we kind of just made a mishmash of everything. We're not really going into history, science, and all of those other things. So we've kind of just broken down everything as the games are, who they were developed by, who they're published by, the general specs of the game, and, just some reception and stuff. Let's get into our own reception of the games. Past, present, future, and I'm posing another question at the end. Which game do you prefer out of the four and why? So I guess I'll go first since you've already just spoken about Madden. Past, I remember playing, obviously Super High Impact the most. I remember playing Tecmo Bowl and not being very good at it. Now, granted, I know you've got some years on me, not many, but more years than me.
Yes.
So at the time that these games were out, I was either A, not alive, or B, very young. So I remember playing the ones that I remember playing Tecmo Bowl, Madden 94, and Super High Impact, obviously. 10-Yard Fight I did not get into until Virtual Console came out. So it was quite a ways away, ways different. And then I plugged it in and I was like, oh my God, this is awful. In my opinion, that's awful. But back then it was revolutionary, you know? I guess that's sort of getting into the present. When I've been revisiting these games, Tecmo Bowl has recently just come out to the Nintendo Entertainment System, part of the Switch, the games that you get for free with your subscription to the online service. So if you are interested in playing that, it is available on the NES. What do they even call it again? I'm a Nintendo person and I'm terrible for not even remembering, but just the NES online service thing that they have. Super High Impact. I own the thing and the actual cart, and I will probably play that thing until I die, just because it holds so much nostalgia for me. I'm not good at Madden. I just have never been good at the original Madden, and I don't know. The craze for the football games and the basketball games just kind of passed me by. So I don't play your NFLs, NCAA, Madden, or the NBA. I just don't play any of them. I know that it's kind of like it's a boy toy type thing. I don't know. I don't play them. But I do own the cartridge of 10-Yard Fight now. Now that's only for sole purposes of having for my collection, because it was a black box label for the Nintendo Entertainment System. And that's like part of, I want to collect all the black box labels. I don't have any desire to put that in my console though. I don't think I'll play a 10-Yard Fight ever again. So, you want to go ahead and talk about, we'll talk about future and which ones we prefer.
Yeah. So past 10-Yard Fight, I didn't play until way later. I mean, that came out in the States on the NES at 1985. I was 4. So I wasn't there yet, but I did play Tecmo Bowl for sure. That was an early on game that I got for the NES when I got my NES console. Mm-hmm. So I had a lot of memories with that one, playing against my uncles, who I think I've told the story before. We got the NES all at the same time. I got one, and 2 of my uncles got them as well. So we played, and they were big into sports games. Right. So I played like Double Dribble with them, Blades of Steel, Tecmo Bowl. Like that was what we did. So I had a lot of fun with it. It was the same thing like Bo Jackson was a beast, so it was good. With Tecmo Bowl, 10-Yard Fight, I went back and played later on. It was just like, I can't do it. Like it shaped where games went to eventually.
Yeah,
but it's not worth going back and looking at again.
The first time I plugged it in, I was seriously like, this is supposed to be a football game?
Yeah.
I was thinking that it was like, rugby or something. It doesn't look like a football game. I'm sorry.
No, it really doesn't. And Madden, like I said, I have an extensive amount of time playing Madden. Super High Impact, I had never actually played. I've seen lots of video footage of it because of the hilarious, the sound clips, the fighting and stuff like that. Stuff that gets your attention even if you didn't play it. So
yeah.
Now, presently, going back and revisiting it, 10-Yard Fight, still terrible. Like I said, like I booted up my NES Classic, which I hacked and have it on there, just to refresh my memory. Played it for a little bit. It's like, yep, 10 minutes. That was more than enough time.
Yeah, it's bad.
Played Tecmo Bowl again. That still holds up. It still looks like it does. There's a lot of nostalgia there for that game. Is it good? It's okay. It still holds up all right.
I think it's more iconic. I mean, when Family Guy does the Bo Jackson thing in their own show, then you've made a good game.
Exactly. They did that Super Bowl ad last year. They came back into the Tecmo Bowl.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that too.
Yeah. And Madden, I booted that up as well. That still plays great. That still holds up. Those are the sports games I actually prefer. So I have played the last couple Madden games, and I'm no good at the modern football. Like, it's gotten too realistic for me. I can't do any of the modern sports games. But in this era, the 90s era, I loved the football, the hockey games, like all those I really enjoyed. Right. So for me, Madden 94 still holds up as a classic for sure. Let's talk about future. Do you see any of these coming back in any sort of iteration?
Aside from obviously we still have Madden. I mean, Madden is just kind of a we get it every year. You know, I can't believe people buy this thing every year. I mean, it is at some point, I seriously think that they're going to just make the main game and update yearly DLC.
And people have been asking for that for a while. It's like, I mean, they do make tweak balances. They have made changes and updates to the game. Unless you're a hardcore football fan, you probably don't catch the changes. They're definitely there. But I think they could come down to a version of the game and just buy, like Destiny does now, like here's the year 1 DLC, here's the year 2 DLC. Just do it like that. Just release a pack.
I mean, because you're paying $60 for a game every single year if you're buying it. Why don't you make it $60 and then make the DLC like $39.99 or $29.99? Just something more realistic if you're just going to patch in stuff. Now, I mean, maybe 5 years down the road when graphics get better, then you bring something else new.
Every generation release it and then just do packs.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. But other than Madden, I mean, I don't think the high impact is Acclaim Entertainment. I don't remember if Acclaim is even around anymore. Is Acclaim around?
I don't think so, because they did.
I know they've done several games, but I'd have to look that up. But I don't think that would be something that they would be interested. I mean, it's kind of just, you go to Madden if you want to play a pro football game. You go to NCAA if you want to play. Like, there's just not much competition for these games anymore. And aside from them making them for Nintendo, you can get them on, you know, the other consoles, Xbox and Sony, and there's no problem, and people get their fix. So I don't think that there's a lot of competition out there, especially when NFL and the NCAA have got their hands all over the certain ones, and they're licensed by them, and they get the actual teams and so on and so forth. So I don't see any other football games actually coming to the forefront aside from Madden and the NCAA football. In terms of, could they make comebacks, though, the only things I can see is, you know, virtual console releases and what we have with the NES Online currently for 10-Yard Fight and Tecmo Bowl, obviously. And I mean, if the Sega Genesis collection comes out one day and Super High Impact is on there, I seriously doubt they can get licensing for that. But I don't think that there's a future for anything aside from Madden, which is quite obvious. So
Acclaim is in fact closed. It was bought out in 2010 actually by Playdom, who was famous for doing Facebook games.
Right.
Who also went out. But it's funny. So they bought Playdom. I mean, they bought Acclaim on May 18, 2010, and 3 months later in August, they closed Acclaim Games. So they just bought it and then flipped it. So here's my proposal to you, though. So Madden obviously is still around, so that's fine. I don't see Tecmo coming back except for the nostalgia purposes. No 10-Yard Fight. We're good. We're fine. Super High Impact, I think, could come back. So Acclaim is gone. It's been dissolved, everything like that. So THQ Nordic, come on, you buy everything else. Buy Super Impact, make an arcade football alternative for people like me that suck at Madden, but still want to play football. Give me something like that where you simplify it. Yes, you need to update it, refresh it. I don't want it to still be 16-bit, but if you could take the core philosophy of what it was, allow the fighting, allow the trash talking.
Yeah, like something funny and amusing and different.
Right. Similar to, like, I mean, I know it's Mutant League football now, but that's a little more grotesque and a little too much for me. But if you just kept it like football guys, but they're just douchebags and like just play football like rough and tumble, like do it like that, I think that could be fun. So I would be down if they did that again in that same spirit as what the old one did. So I think we probably know where we stand here, but officially, which of the 4 games is your favorite and why?
It's obvious. Super High Impact, just for nostalgia's sake, and even playing through these things again. I don't know. I think it's just having played it so much, I know the mechanics of the game, and I'm not so familiar with the other mechanics of the other games. So that's pretty much a no-brainer. Spoiler alert, if you're just now listening.
Nope, that's fair. And mine, no surprise, Madden 94 for me is my pick there. Just, I think the mechanics were solid. The vast playbook you had there. You had the NFL license, so you could play as your favorite team or your favorite players. And the nostalgia factor for me as well. Like, I spent a lot of time with family playing that game, and that always enhances your experience and your memories with the games. And I mean, fortunate enough for me, like, this is a game I can go back and it's aged okay. It's not super terrible. Like, sometimes you have those memories and you go back and you play the game, you're like, oh my god, this is awful.
I don't know, like the intro part where John Madden is like just changing positions, just very, and then like his mouth just goes like, Just like weird clips of his face and stuff. Though, yeah,
no,
that's a little bit.
Yeah, that's still funny for sure. So Madden for me, Coach Mo, you can celebrate there. You got Kevin to talk about Madden for more than 5 minutes in a positive manner. It's Christmas. Merry Christmas, Coach Mo. That's for you, buddy. So I think we're wrapped up for this evening, right?
Yeah, a bunch of foosball talk, and I hope for anybody that did not know about the game, like you're just not interested in it, or you haven't ever learned the rules, because there's a lot of people I know my age that just don't know the rules of the game. I hope that at least we were able to educate you for a little bit by that, and for our folks overseas that are listening, not in America. I mean, Canada, they have their own Canadian Football League, so they're not.
Bon Jovi owns like half of it, doesn't he?
Does he really?
He owns like 2 teams, I think, at least.
Oh my gosh! Well, apparently there is a Canadian Football League. It exists. I've seen games that have actually been played there. Tim Tebow actually went to play quarterback over there for a couple seasons. Nice how that worked out. But I hope you guys enjoyed our foosball talk. I think we've touched on pretty much every early football game that I guess mattered or had a good presence in the arcade and early video game systems.
Exactly. You have to remember, like, this show is meant to be kind of a historical documentation of video games and history. And as much as people may kind of poo-poo on bro gamers for playing just Madden and Call of Duty, we have to remember that sports games are still a landmark, a tent pole in the early gaming industry. And we have to remember that they're major sellers and moneymakers across the board. And that helps fund some of those games that maybe if you're not a sports gamer, you do enjoy, because without that giant bankroll they're getting off these things, we may not see some of these games that we do enjoy. So it's important to remember to know your roots. And that's the whole purpose of this whole show here.
It's in the game.
It's in the game. That sound clip's going to be in this episode like 10 times.
Please.
So it is my turn, and I'm gonna turn the tables here, Caro.
No, but we've turned tables twice. Like we went from 2 games to 4 games. To
now no. It's nothing crazy. I'm not even giving a vote. It's 1 game this time.
Yeah, okay. We're not even doing a vote.
Nope. I'm just saying it. But the thing is, I'm not actually going to say it.
Oh, what?
You have to listen back because I'm just going to play the music from this game.
Oh, okay. And I'm just going to know.
And you're going to know.
Okay.
Well, you should know.
Well, that's not fair. When's this going up? So we're
like
recording
this weekend.
Tuesday the 11th.
This weekend.
Okay.
You got plenty of time. And this game is now easily accessible in many places, so you'll have no problem playing it.
Can I get a system? Which system?
Which system was it originally on, or which system is it on now?
Oh, well, which one was it originally on?
PS2.
Oh my god. Okay. All right.
Okay. So
we're so old. The PS2 is considered retro now. What the hell?
Yeah. I just want to do this game because it's fun, so I don't care.
Okay.
But it's retro enough, I think. It's. I mean, this game's easily over. Shoot, when was this game? Hold on, I need to look now. So, Stalkara, where can people find you?
People can find me on Twitter at the Nintendame. I am also a regular streamer on Twitch, also the Nintendame. I stream daily from 3:30 to 5:30 or 6 o'clock, depending on which. That's Eastern time on weekdays. Weekends are up in the air, depending on how much time I have. But I almost always try to do weekends. And then you can also find me in the PSVG Discord.
Perfect. So the game is almost 15 years old at this point. So I think that counts enough to be retro for me.
Oh my god, what was I doing 15 years ago?
It's the game is half as old as you. Look at it that way.
Oh yeah, I just turned 29. Great. Yeah, I was basically in high school.
Yep. Yep.
This is not right. This is not right.
No, so it's retro. You're getting old. You have to admit it, like the rest of us. But so yeah, you can find me on the internet at PSVG Kevin on Twitter. Follow the whole podcast network at PSVG on Twitter. Check out the website, of course, as always, psvg.blog to find links to everything, including the Discord or Twitch channels. Everything you need is all there for you. Big thank you, one and all, to all of our Patreon supporters. We do appreciate your support, and we have some surprises and some other things heading your way very, very soon. So stay tuned to that. But more importantly, oh no, I can't say we never stop gaming. Force of habit. Oh.
If you never stop gaming, then we never mind. Sorry, I was about to make a bad joke and then I realized it didn't make any sense.
Well, everybody, class dismissed. You have officially been schooled.
EA Sports. It's in the game.